Loyalist community and put her down on the streets. Fireworks, masonry, petrol bombs, all hurled at police lines.
Supposed to be a peaceful protest about flying the Union flag. It's like a red rag to a bull. Protestants taunt the Catholics. Police reinforcements.
There is a specific kind of hideous contrast currently unfolding on the shores of Kent, one that the evening news attempts to mask with sanitised figures and reassuring press releases. While the Prime Minister stands at the dispatch box flexing the fact that hotel occupation rates are at their lowest in 18 months, the reality on the ground is a systemic red alert. This morning alone, 500 new unregulated arrivals touched down on British soil. The most painful nail in this story, it took the authorities exactly 30 minutes to check every single individual through. In the time it takes you to eat breakfast, 500 unvetted males were processed into the system. This isn't a victory for border security. It is a liquidation of safety designed to feed a narrative while the country bleeds its resources. To understand the stunt currently being pulled by Downing Street, you have to look at where these individuals are actually going. The government is shouting from the rooftops about closing hotels, but they aren't telling you about the decentralisation of the crisis. Those leaving the hotels aren't being deported, they are being moved into houses in multiple occupation, HMOs, brand new council houses and military barracks across the United Kingdom. It is a managed decline of local transparency. While the optics of the hotel front gate improve, the reality for quiet neighbourhoods like Crowborough is a surge in unvetted demographics roaming the streets. The government is betting that if you can't see the crisis on the news, you won't notice it in your back garden.
While the administration obsesses over smashing boat parts, the arithmetic of the channel is moving in the wrong direction. Total small boat arrivals hit 41,472 last year, a staggering 13% increase from the year before. The prosecutor in number 10 promised to smash the gangs, yet the volume of unauthorised maritime arrivals is tracking toward a new British record. We are witnessing a sovereign inversion. The government claims to be deporting 64,000 people, yet insiders reveal that the vast majority of those removed are not the small boat arrivals currently filling our HMOs. It is a categorical deception designed to make the public believe the system is working, while the boats keep coming, 500 at a time.
The most stunning data point from this week's surge is the processing speed. Processing 500 individuals in 30 minutes isn't efficiency, it is a surrender of vetting standards. When security is traded for statistics, the risk is entirely absorbed by the taxpayer. We are seeing a digital cordon being built around the law-abiding citizen, while those who bypass every legal entry requirement are given a bed, breakfast, and the freedom to roam. Critics argue that this isn't incompetence, it is a strategic electorate expansion. Every boat is viewed not as a crisis, but as a constituency in training for 2030. The hotels may be closing, but the border is wider than ever. We are witnessing a deadlock between a leadership that thinks a spreadsheet can replace a wall, and a public that knows its safety is being liquidated. The Prince of Human Rights in Downing Street has been warned. You can manage the media, and you can spin the numbers, but you cannot hide 500 people a morning forever. The curiosity of the viewer shouldn't be about whether the hotels are empty, but about whose street is being filled next. The silence from the countryside is over. The last orders for British border integrity have been called. The standoff has begun.
British taxpayers are watching their money being poured straight down the drain. Not metaphorically, but literally siphoned into thousands of taxi rides stretching across the country as the asylum system unravels in real time. The revelation landed like a thunderclap in Westminster. The Home Office, through its contractors, has been burning hundreds of thousands of pounds every month on cab journeys for asylum seekers, including £600 trips, running hundreds of miles, even when cheaper transport existed, and even when migrants themselves questioned the insanity of the policy. And the most shocking detail? Some of the ministers supposedly in charge only learned about it when the story hit the headlines. What follows is a scandal of waste, blindness, and bureaucratic collapse, the kind that exposes not just a policy failure, but a political system no longer in control of its own machinery.
In essence, the Home Office, in this respect, they've been paying £350,000 a month. Now, the reason for this is that migrants are moved into various asylum hotels, various houses of multiple occupation, all of that. But they get moved around. So under the Home Office rules, we, the taxpayer, we have to fund these tax. And for some reason, the rules are we can't put these poor people on trains or aeroplanes.
It began with a leak, Clear Springs Ready Homes. One of the Home Office's biggest contractors for asylum accommodation had been quietly authorising extraordinary travel expenses. According to internal figures, the government was handing over £350,000 every single month to just one taxi firm. One company, PTS 247, allegedly ran up to 6,000 journeys, some costing £600 each, often covering distances that any rational bureaucracy would serve with cheap rail tickets or domestic flights. But the rules are clear and inexplicable. Under Home Office guidance, migrants moved between temporary accommodations must retain their original GP registration. If they were allocated a doctor 200 miles away, the public, the very taxpayers footing the bill, must pay to send them back there. Not by train, not by plane, only by cab. One driver reportedly ferried a passenger from London to Scotland for a simple checkup. That journey alone could have bought a week's wages for a British family. When questioned, an Afghan migrant named Kadir described his 250-mile taxi ride for a knee appointment. He wanted to take the train. The Home Office forbade it. "We know they sip spending too much money," he said, "but we do not have a choice." The scandal remained buried until PTS 247 launched a legal challenge against Clear Springs for £2.75 million in unpaid invoices. Only then did the monstrous scale of the operation come into public view. Documents revealed allegations of fabricated appointments, phantom journeys, and migrants requesting lifts for nights out. Insiders claimed the system was so lax, so blind, that appointments could be invented without scrutiny, because contractors were required to move heaven and earth to fulfill every request. A two-tier system had quietly formed, one where asylum seekers moved freely across Britain by taxi, while millions of British citizens struggled to obtain a GP appointment in their own town. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood reportedly only learned of the scandal when journalists at the BBC and The Sun published it. Officials inside Downing Street reacted with disbelief. How could a £350,000 per month line item escape scrutiny? How did a contractor operate unchecked while the asylum budget ballooned to record levels? This is unfolding against a brutal political backdrop. The UK has just recorded over 41,000 small boat arrivals in the past year, the highest ever. Public anger is rising sharply. Anti-immigration protests across 2025 have escalated into street confrontations, becoming one of the defining domestic crises of the year. At the same time, Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government is pushing through the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Act, aiming to restore control over a system widely viewed as overwhelmed. Migrants may soon need 20 to 30 years to secure permanent residency. Yet while ministers promise toughness, scandals like the taxi fiasco fuel a narrative of chaos, mismanagement and preferential treatment. The NHS, already frozen under unbearable demand, is being stretched even further in high migration zones. Some GP surgeries report swelling caseloads that push local families to the back of the line. Dentists remain unreachable for millions. Against this suffering, the image of asylum seekers being chauffeured in Mercedes saloons for routine appointments has set public outrage ablaze. There is also the broader financial landscape. Between accommodation, welfare, legal aid, and travel expenses, the UK has spent £6.6 billion in just 5 years on asylum support schemes. And this is before factoring in the hotel crisis, a system projected to cost £10 billion by the end of the decade if allowed to continue unchecked. The political opposition argues that generosity has become a weakness. Critics inside think tanks warn that Britain's instinct to appear humane, responsible, and outward-facing has created a vacuum of accountability in which contractors thrive and taxpayers lose. This is not the first time transport contracts have exposed systemic rot. Local councils across England have faced public backlash over multi-million-pound taxi schemes for special educational needs. Pupils, necessary services delivered at inflated costs through poorly regulated private firms. Migration transport is simply another branch of a tangled, opaque procurement system, riddled with loopholes. But never before has the price tag reached this scale. Never before has public confidence in migration policy been so fragile. And never before has a Prime Minister entered office, promising order, only to watch a scandal so emblematic of dysfunction explode under his leadership. This affair strikes at the heart of the social contract. If taxpayers cannot trust government to safeguard their money, how can they trust it to safeguard their borders? In a country wrestling with rising inflation, economic pressure, mounting NHS waiting lists, and a renewed sense of national insecurity, the taxi scandal is more than an embarrassment. It is a symbol of bureaucracy losing control, of ministers out of the loop, of an asylum system so fractured that even reasonable migrants describe it as wasteful. With Britain attempting to stabilise relations with the EU, navigate a cautious stance toward US foreign policy, and manage rising domestic tensions, this scandal lands at the worst possible moment. The Home Office has launched an official investigation. Ministers insist this will never happen again. But investigations do not reverse the waste. They do not erase the anger, and they do not fix the gaping holes in Britain's asylum machinery. So Westminster faces a question that cuts deeper than any invoice. If Britain cannot control a taxi bill, how can it control its borders or its future?
"7 years. That is how long the diplomatic line between 10 Downing Street and the Great Hall of the People has been disconnected. While the British economy shivered in a self-imposed ice age, the world moved on. Today, Keir Starmer has touched down in Beijing, the first British Prime Minister to do so since 2018. He isn't alone. He's backed by 60 of the UK's most powerful business and cultural titans. But this isn't a victory lap. It is a desperate, calculated gamble. Why now? Because the UK is hungry for growth, and Starmer has realised that you cannot ignore a superpower without paying a price. But as he prepares to shake hands with President Xi Jinping, a painful question hangs over Westminster. Is Britain selling its soul for a seat at the table, or is this the pragmatism we've been missing?
To understand this visit, you have to look at the sweeteners already on the table. For months, a controversial proposal for a Chinese mega-embassy in the heart of London sat in a drawer, stalled by security concerns. Suddenly, the path is clearing. Critics, including Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, are calling this posturing at best and surrender at worst. They argue that by approving a fortress-like diplomatic hub in our capital, Starmer is giving away leverage before the negotiations even begin. But the government's logic is cold and clear. You don't get a reset without a gesture of good faith. The golden era of David Cameron is dead, but Starmer is trying to build something more consistent, a relationship that doesn't veer from total warmth to total frost.
Why does Beijing care about a post-Brexit Britain? It isn't for our manufacturing, it's for our DNA. The UK remains a global service power. Our law firms, our accountants, and our banks in the City of London provide the plumbing for global trade that China still needs to navigate. Starmer knows that while the US and China are locked in a tech war, the UK can be the middleman of global finance. This visit is an invitation for Chinese capital to return to British shores, even as our own intelligence agencies warn that state-sponsored actors remain a daily threat. It is the ultimate tightrope walk, courting the investor while watching the intruder.
But there is a human face to this political math. Jimmy Lai, the UK national and pro-democracy campaigner, currently sits in a Hong Kong cell. If Starmer remains silent on Lai to protect trade deals, he faces a revolt at home. If he speaks too loudly, the Ice Age returns before his plane even leaves the tarmac. This is the nail in the story, the friction between British values and British bank accounts. Keir Starmer promised a government of service. Today he is testing whether that service includes making peace with a regime that many in his own parliament distrust. This visit won't result in a sudden flood of gold. It is merely the first crack in the ice. As the Prime Minister walks through Beijing, he isn't just seeking deals, he is seeking a new identity for Britain on the world stage. Whether this thaw leads to a spring of growth or a flood of new security risks is a question only